I'm Jen. It's 5 Minutes with Jen. Some of the stuff I'm talking about tonight are going to be talked about. My publishing friends are going to talk about it too. If they talk about it too, you know that your book group is just going to have to read this, and we're not double dipping. It's worthy. Yes, so our first book is perfect for... Whoops. It's perfect for people who like their heroines with a whole lot of attitude. Saint Maisie is historic fiction based on a true woman who I came to think of as the Saint Teresa of the Bowery during the Depression. If Saint Teresa liked men a whole lot, liked drinking, and liked to smoke, she ended up doing amazing rescue work with the homeless of Greenwich Village. Jamie Attenberg, you might remember her from The Middlesteins. This is a total departure for her. There's not a lot of humor in this book, but there is a lot of heart. And Maisie is a heroine you're all just going to fall in love with. Kitchens of the Great Midwest. This is a book that I say will do for food what Art of Fielding did for baseball, which is even if you don't care about baseball, you ended up caring about Art of Fielding. This is what's going to happen with Kitchens of the Great Midwest. The heroine of this book, Ava Thornfeld, ends up being the palette of her generation. But it's not really a book about Ava. It's a book about everybody around Ava and the influences they had on her life. And tonight we have Pat Prager's Peanut Butter Cups. So that's very exciting. Kitchens of the Great Midwest comes out in August. And it's already one of my favorite books of the year. Villa America. One of my obsessions is Sarah and Gerald Murphy. I have read everything about them. I love them. Sarah and Gerald were an amazing influence in that they were the first people that decided that summering on the Riviera could be cool. And they invited some of their friends to join them, like Ernest Hemingway, Pablo Picasso, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Zelda. And they lived this beautiful, charmed, golden life. And then it all came crashing down. It's perfect for book groups that love their historic fiction with a little bit of realism. And I promise you, you will be going back and reading Everybody Was So Young, which is the nonfiction telling of their life. If you've ever wanted to introduce short stories to your book group and don't know where to begin, The Wonder Garden is the perfect place to begin. Lauren Akinpora was here last night and grew up in town. And when I started reading the short story collection, I tweeted out at her, so is it Darien or Wilton? And she said, yes, and it's Westchester too. It reads like a novel. They're interconnected short stories. You'll be reading a short story and you'll go, wow, there is something really off about that person in that story. And 2 stories later, you'll find out what was off about that person in that story. The Wonder Garden is wonderful for a good intro to a short story. If you have that book group where people just do not read the book, this is perfect. Again, it's short stories, and then there's short stories about just that, almost famous women. Some of the stories are a little longer than others. There's one story that's really only maybe 2 pages long. There's something for everybody in this book. It hooked me when I learned that the first story was about co-joined twin performers in vaudeville in the 1930s. And again, you'll be Googling and want to know more about these almost famous women. The story of Byron's daughter is heartbreaking. Some of them are funny, some of them are heartbreaking. There's a little something there for everybody. Girl in the Moonlight is perfect for your smart, literate book groups that are looking for a little romance. Girl in the Moonlight is basically a retelling of Brideshead Revisited. If Brideshead Revisited was now and took place on Long Island in the Hamptons. A young man falls in love with a family, falls in love with a brother, falls in love with a sister, and in turn falls in love with art. You might remember Charles Duval from his first book, Indiscretion, which was a lot of fun. This is just as much fun as that. The Swans of Fifth Avenue. It's about Truman Capote's Swans. Babe Paley, CZ Guest, the golden era of 1950s, 1960s New York, and the betrayal that occurs. I am in the thick of this right now, and as much as I love you all, I cannot wait to get back to and find out what Babe is up to, and Truman. The Art of Crash Landing begins with the heroine of the book packing everything she owns in the world in 6 trash bags, stealing her ex-boyfriend's signed guitar strap, and bailing. And that's probably the best decision she makes throughout the entire book. She's a delightfully screwed up narrator. She's funny, she's sharp, she's in a whole lot of trouble, and she finds out that she has inherited from her grandmother's estate. So she goes to her mother's hometown where she's never been and learns that her mother, who is as hot a mess as she was, really began life with a whole lot of promise, and she decides to find out what went wrong. So for those that like humor with a lot of heart, and she ends up working in a library, and you get to learn all the stuff that we never tell you about libraries. I'm convinced that Melissa worked in a library, totally convinced, because she got it all right. And for my last book for tonight, City on Fire. City on Fire is one of the hottest debuts of the fall. This is for book groups who are not afraid of the big fat book, because this is a big fat book. It's a big fat chocolate cake of a book. It's dense, it's rich, its characters are wonderful. I was lucky enough when I was visiting Jen's, the other Jen, when I was visiting other Jen at Random House, he was there, and I was so excited that I was going to meet this person who was my age, that grew up in the New York that I grew up in, and knew all the things that I knew about New York, and then he shows up and he's 12. And it just turns out that his research was really that spot on about New York in 1977 and 78. It's dirty, it's gritty, it's wonderful. I can't say enough good things about it. And that's it. That's what we've got. Thanks very much.